printed a big article on a crashed astronaut that was buried in a local cemetery in Aurora, Texas, before the turn of the century. And people, UFO hunters from everywhere, they diverged on Aurora with picks and shovels and was determined to dig up this grave. The local city council got together real quick and put a stop to that and vetoed them from doing that, even put armed guards in the cemetery at night to stop them. Well, there was a headstone, marker, stone, that had been carved with a picture of a cigar-shaped looking saucer. And it had been there since 1897. Well, it was stolen in 1973, and somebody was poking around the grave. But as far as they know, the grave has never been dug up, and penetrating radar has been used several times, and there is a small grave there, badly decomposed, 121 years later now. But there is something, a small something buried there, or the very decomposed remains of something small that's buried there. But who knows what it is? I mean, I can't say for sure. The Aurora story is clouded with it happened, it didn't happen, it's a lie, it's the truth. So, but there is something there, and the Texas Historical Society must really believe that it's true, because they put a historical plaque there in 1976 commemorating the site where a pre-century astronaut crashed there and was buried in this cemetery.
Well, that somebody believed in it, in the state government to get that done at least. It just makes you just wonder, about, if it happened in Aurora, how many other places this has happened to. But the one thing it's got me concerned, the townsfolk, putting it into a abandoned well or a well, the remains of the UFO, I would think it could have contaminated everybody. Plus, who knows what the UFO used, what type of poisoning they all could have gotten. They were lucky to even survive after that, doing that type of move.
Well, it's funny you say that, because it poisoned the well. Whatever they poured down in there poisoned the well really badly, because years later they cleaned it out for somebody to use. And even after they cleaned it out, the water in there was so badly poisoned, he got some horrible, horrible arthritis that that crippled him. His hand swelled up, and he had it was like acromegalia. His whole body was disfigured by the water from that well.
I wonder how long it took to do that to him, too. I mean, but I guess the townfolk are lucky, because, a lot of times you got a well, that water comes, where it actually connects to the whole water, underground system, which could have affected the whole town.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I just know the one guy that claimed he had all this the problems with himself, and they interviewed him several times and took pictures of him and all. He was in real bad shape, but I don't know if anybody else drank out of it or not.
Yeah, now I don't remember if it was you or somebody else on Aurora that talked about it. Didn't the military in the 50s or something like that go and actually try to recover something out of the well or something? No, I totally could have gotten that wrong.
No, actually, it wasn't the military. It was Ancient Aliens did an episode.
Okay.
Where I think it was Ancient Aliens. It's one of those shows that went out there, and they actually uncapped this well that had a big cement plate over it, and took a tractor and moved it off, and was crawling down in there trying to see if there was any remains of it left. And I don't know what they found. All I know is they found a bunch of snakes down in there, and there's probably some little pieces of it that were still there, or maybe they had decomposed. I don't know. But yeah, that's where you saw that. You saw that on one of those shows.
Oh, that's quite possible. Your feeling, I mean, you wrote the book. I mean, do you feel like that a UFO did crash in Aurora?
Absolutely. I think that a single alien scout vehicle lost control and slammed into that water tower, and the good people of the town buried him in their cemetery. And I'll stand by that from now on.
And that was what, 1897, something like that, this happened? Wow.
50 years before Roswell. Same exact thing that happened in Roswell. You know, those 3 or 4 aliens that were in the ship at Roswell, I think that the ship got struck by lightning. It hit the ground at Brazel's farm and basically exploded in over air, and littered his sheep pasture, hit the ground, skidded along, but managed to get back up in the air and over the mountain range before it crashed again, I think like 70 miles to the west. And that's why there were 2 crash scenes at Roswell. One where the ship got struck by lightning and blew up, and then 2, again, however, it managed to get back up in the air and go another 70 miles, and then it just was done for, and then that's when they crashed. And I also believe that there was 1 survivor from that, the EB, that was taken to one of the bases and lived there till 1952, I believe it was. So, yeah. But Aurora, basically the same story. Lost control, crashed, died. Yeah. And before that was way before the feds could move in there and do anything with it. I mean, there wasn't no feds at that time. It was just law on horseback. So nothing was covered up. Nothing was covered up.
Yeah, but
they just buried him.
Yeah, well, you have to realize, too, when we're talking about, that's pretty much of the Wild West ending right around that time frame, you know, moving into modern, history. And you have to think, a lot of the people weren't very much educated. So, when something comes down like that from the sky, they don't know what it is. I'm sure a lot of them thought it was a demon or something, like that, especially if they saw an alien body, it looked like a gray or anything like that. You could imagine how freaked out those people would have been. I know I would have been so scared that, oh, wow, I would have tried to, cover it up as fast as I could, because you don't want the other communities around there to know what happened, because you'd be tainted.
Right. Well, the cowboys and farmers of the Old West, they described these strange flying objects with more familiar names, such as bulls, bowls, dragons, serpents, cigars, and balloons. They didn't have technical names. They didn't have flying saucer. They didn't have UFO. They didn't have these names like we have today. So they called the objects what they reminded them of. If one was oblong and sort of resembled a rolling pin, they may call it a rolling pin. That's why this Aurora craft has always been referred to as a cigar-shaped object. Well, if you look at a flying saucer from the side, it doesn't look round. It looks like a cigar shape. So that's where some of these wild names come into. Serpents and dragons, that they used to call them, because serpents and dragons spit fire, and these objects in the sky were shooting flames. So that's where the reference comes from.
Yeah, but boy, could you imagine, though, something like in a little farming town like that, something comes crashing down right there. I mean, boy, and you're right. I mean, there was no a government as such as, as of today. I mean, even till around probably about 1905 or so, the government really started pulling itself together, So, I mean, I don't know. They didn't know how to handle it. So I guess they did the best thing they could, to get rid of the evidence and pretend it never really happened.
Right. Well, the only thing they could have done was telegraph the Texas Rangers over in Fort Worth, and if they thought it worthy to come over and check it out, maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But yeah, they like, this being, this poor being, no matter what he was or where he was from, had died, so they just buried him like they would anybody else that wandered into town and died.
Yeah, they gave him a Christian burial. Hopefully a Christian burial,
It said that in the paper. It referenced that in the paper. The pilot of the vessel will be buried tomorrow with full Christian rites. That's a direct quote out of the newspaper, the Fort Worth paper from 1897.
Oh, wow. And like Roswell and so many other places where UFOs have crashed, I guess, some of the UFOs that crashed, after World War II, they blame some of the crashes like on our radar systems that we had at the time, basically could, jam the UFO. And they say that some of the crashes, they even said, I've read where a couple people claimed that the Roswell wasn't actually struck by lightning. It was because of radar caused it to crash. It could be. I mean. Could
have been.
Yeah.
I know they wouldn't know radar in 1897, so I don't know why this little fella crashed. I don't know if he got caught in a windstorm and just was, just accidentally clipped the windmill, and that sent him veering into the path of the water tower. Or if his craft was in trouble, maybe it was giving him problems and he couldn't stay airborne, and he just happened to hit those two things trying to make a rough landing. Who knows? Again, 121 years ago, we'll never know.
Well, I hate to say this. He probably was better off to have perished with the UFO, because you imagine what the town folks and the communities all around there would have done if they actually, the alien survived. I mean, you would have all these groups of people saying that it's the devil or something, because undoubtedly, the Greys look totally opposite of us. So, I mean, like, they don't look anything like a human. So, I mean, I would, I don't know. He's lucky, and it's lucky that it probably didn't survive.
Yeah, the fanatics of the time, who knows what they would have done.
Probably would have used a rope on him.
May have. I don't know. It scared them. It frightened them so much. I'm sure it frightened them as it was, but if he was still alive, they wouldn't have known what to do with him.
Oh, no. I mean, their anatomy is totally, undoubtedly nothing like ours. That kind of like, the alien that's supposed to lived after Roswell and, survived quite a few years. You can imagine how much torture it probably had to go through every day.
Well, somebody, one of the advisors to President Reagan leaked a memo from from Reagan. I think it was Reagan. It was Reagan. I got it wrote in the novel, but it'd take me too long to find it. But anyway, the fate of the one survivor from Roswell, he was shipped to one of the bases, and a special room was built for him. And that's where he stayed the rest of his life. I mean, so they literally locked him in a room where he could survive, and probably interrogated him every day for secrets and information, which they admit he gave them lots of information, told him where he was from and all this stuff, and they just got so much information from him, and he died of some unknown illness in 1952.
Well, yeah, undoubtedly, of any type of illness, I mean, we wouldn't have been able to help. I mean, let's face it. I mean, we still have problems helping people with illness, let alone, an alien species,
Right. And in 1952, they wouldn't have had the technology they had today. I mean, if it had been today, maybe they could have figured out what to do for him. But back then, they wouldn't have had a clue. So, yeah. But it's remarkable. It's remarkable that he lived from 1947 to 1952.
Yeah, how would you just even figuring out what they would eat, or or even communicate with, of course, I don't know, maybe they understand our language, I don't know, but I sure wouldn't want to run across a gray.